I think we're at the point where we can admit right now that BLM actually just made race relations worse. It literally made things so much worse between black people and white people, because you got to think about it. Before BLM, you had white people and black people pretty much trying to find a way to navigate around each other. Like, people were chilling. If you even look at Clueless, the movie back in like 1995, this was black people and white people.
Hi, Rob. My name is Danny. I'm an ex-Trump supporter. I'm an ex-conservative, and I am a former member of a white supremacist organization. And I'm going to address this video with the utmost respect and in love. BLM absolutely did make race relations worse, but let me tell you why. And I happen to be incarcerated at the height of the Trump candidacy and the Black Lives Matters movement. And I remember going around prison, me, the white guy, telling black people that Trump will be the best thing that ever happened to them. They need to get off the Democrat plantation. And when I was a part of this movement, I would love to find people like you and Candace Owens that I could weaponize and tokenize to fit my narrative. But ultimately what happened is I read a book by Michelle Alexander called The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. I read this book to be well-versed in the debate, and ultimately I became educated. And I realized when it comes to race and black history in America, I was, clueless. And I would say things like systemic racism doesn't exist. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, quit perpetuating the victim mindset. And it's 2024, accept accountability for your actions. But Michelle Alexander and literally thousands of other black creators and authors taught me a thing or two. They taught me that the 13th Amendment was the abolishment of slavery. You know, the time that white folks like to say happened so long ago. But they put this special little clause in there that's still relevant today in 2024. It said, except when punishment for a crime. And after the Civil War, enslaved labor was such an integral part of the Southern economy that it would collapse without it. Well, they needed new ways to get free labor. So mass incarceration was birthed. Right here in the South, they created laws that were called the Black Codes. The Black Codes would literally arrest people for nothing other than being black. They created laws that targeted black folks. Some of those laws were being out past curfew. Black folks had curfew. Not having a job, no white folks would give them a job. Working for somebody other than a white man. Loitering in the streets, we still see a lot of those laws today. And they're almost always predominantly in the black neighborhoods at the little corner store that would say no loitering. But what I'm saying is that free black folks were now put back in chains and working on the same exact plantations that they were just freed from. Then we had convict leasing, black reconstruction. We fast forward 100 years, you had Jim Crow segregation. Black folks faced second-class citizenship, disenfranchised from voting, facing barriers to education, barriers to employment, barriers to housing. Then we passed the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, right? And then slavery and racism and all that stuff just went away. And America was now no longer a racist nation. Well, what happened after the Civil Rights Movement? We had a 700% increase in our prison population. Just take a look at this. We went from 300,000 inmates to 2.1 million inmates. And even when you adjust for population, the math just doesn't math. Now, did Americans just become more criminal, or was there something more nefarious at play? Well, thanks to black educators like Michelle Alexander, I learned something else. 1/3 of black men have at least one felony conviction. 1 in 3 black males carry a convicted felon label. 1 in 6 Latino males, 1 in 17 white males. Black adults are more than 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than white adults. So one of two things had to be true. Either black people were inherently evil and more criminal, and Rob, I can't believe that you would think that about yourself, and I just couldn't find that to be true, so I had to dig a little bit deeper. Or could it be that there was a system set in place by the politics of white supremacy, by design, that was still perpetuating systemic racism today? And it was in that moment that I realized that I truly was clueless. I was ignorant. I was misinformed. I was uneducated. You see, when I joined a white supremacist organization, it wasn't because I hated black people. Even after joining the organization, I didn't think I was racist, just like many Republicans don't think that they're racist, just like many people who are in some of these organizations today don't think that they are racist. In their minds, they are not anti-other groups of people. They're just pro their people. Unfortunately, though, in this country, being pro-white has always come at the expense of other demographics of people, whether it was the black community, whether it was the indigenous, whether it was women, whether it was Hispanic community, Latinos, immigrants, you name it. White supremacy is always at the expense of other groups of people. And the truth is, Rob, I'm a firm believer in personal accountability. But believing and advocating for a better system and accepting personal accountability for our actions are not mutually exclusive ideas. Now, it's not my job to police the black community, but it is my job to educate my community. And the vast majority of people in my community who are ultra-conservative, they're Republicans, do not believe systemic racism exists. The vast majority of them still use terms like black on black crime. The vast majority of them still will say 13% of the population commits 50% of all the violent crime. And the vast majority of them still equate being black with criminality. And that, my friend, is racist. We have so much work to do as a country. And for us to truly unite in the way that you said, white people need to become educated. Racism is on the ballot in November. We are not going back. Madam Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Walz for President and Vice President 2024. Let's go.